On the morning of April 11th, 1986, the city of Miami, Florida, woke up to a scene that would later be described as one of the deadliest shootouts in FBI history. It began like any other Friday, warm, uneventful, quiet. But by mid-morning, a peaceful suburban neighborhood would become the backdrop for a gun battle that would forever change how the FBI trained and armed its agents. At the center of it all were two suspects, Michael Lee Platt and William Russell Maddox. Both men were ex-military, skilled with firearms and increasingly dangerous. Over the previous months, they had carried out a series of violent bank robberies across South Florida. In each case, the pattern was the same: precision, aggression, and no hesitation to use deadly force. For weeks, FBI agents had been tracking these men. Tips from witnesses and evidence from crime scenes slowly brought investigators closer. On that Friday morning, agents believed they had found the break they needed. A vehicle matching the suspect description had been spotted. Agents mobilized quickly, hoping to intercept them before they could strike again. What they didn't know was how heavily armed the men were, or how far they were willing to go to escape. Around 9:30 a.m., 8 FBI agents in unmarked vehicles began tailing the suspects in a stolen Monte Carlo. The plan was to make a controlled stop, quiet, fast, and by the book. But as the vehicles closed in, everything unraveled in seconds. The suspect vehicle suddenly swerved, colliding with one of the FBI cars. The force of the impact disabled it instantly. In the chaos, other vehicles jammed into one another, trapping everyone in a tight, vulnerable space. And then, gunfire. Platt and Maddox didn't wait. They opened fire with military-grade weapons, including a semi-automatic Ruger Mini 14 rifle, unleashing a barrage of bullets. Within moments, the scene descended into total violence. Agents fought back, but many were caught off guard. Some only had standard-issue revolvers and shotguns, no match for firepower they were facing. The sound of gunshots echoed across the neighborhood. People hid in their homes, frozen by the intensity of what they were hearing. What was supposed to be a quick takedown had turned into a full-blown urban battlefield. The FBI agents had hoped for a fast, clean arrest. Instead, they found themselves in a nightmare scenario, ambushed in close quarters, pinned down by relentless gunfire and dangerously outgunned. Michael Platt, who had military training and a reputation for being ruthlessly tactical, took the lead in the assault. Armed with his Mini 14 rifle, he began firing rapidly from inside the stolen Monte Carlo. His partner, William Maddox, also armed, joined in. Both men wore no body armor, but they had the advantage of surprise and firepower. For the agents on the scene, survival instincts kicked in. Some took cover behind car doors. Others, already wounded, kept returning fire with revolvers, outdated sidearms that required reloading after 6 shots. Despite their training, they were in an impossible position. One of the first agents to be seriously hit was Benjamin Grogan, a respected veteran with nearly 20 years in the Bureau. His partner, Jerry Dove, was struck soon after. The gunman's bullets tore through glass, steel, and bone, merciless and fast. Nearby, agents like Ed Mireles and John Hanlon were also taking heavy fire. Mireles suffered a shotgun blast in his arm but refused to back down. Bleeding and half-crippled, he continued to return fire. It was chaos. More than 140 rounds were exchanged in less than 5 minutes. The close range, no more than 20 feet in many cases, made every shot lethal. FBI vehicles offered little real cover. Engines were blown apart, tires flattened, windows shattered. A neighbor who peeked through a curtain later said it looked like a war zone. "I thought it was fireworks at first," she told a reporter. "Then I saw men crawling on the ground, and I knew something was terribly wrong." Through it all, Platt kept moving. At one point, despite being wounded, he exited the vehicle and continued firing, even as agents struggled to reload. The training and equipment gap between both sides was on full display, and it was costing lives. At that moment, the FBI faced one of its darkest hours. As the shootout raged on, the situation for the FBI agents became increasingly desperate. Several were injured, 2 were already down, and ammunition was running low. But amid the gunfire and chaos, acts of courage unfolded quiet, determined, and fearless. Special Agent Ed Mireles was severely wounded, his left arm nearly useless after being hit by a shotgun blast. Despite the pain, he refused to retreat. With one functioning arm, he managed to drag himself toward cover, all while still exchanging fire with the suspects. It was Mireles who noticed that Platt and Maddox, though badly wounded themselves, were attempting to reposition, possibly to steal another car and escape. Their Monte Carlo was disabled, riddled with bullet holes and leaking fluids. But their will to survive and to kill hadn't faded. Both suspects made their way toward one of the FBI vehicles. Platt was in worse shape, but still moving. He carried his Mini 14 rifle like it weighed nothing, even though he had been shot multiple times. He climbed into the vehicle with Maddox close behind. It was clear. They intended to flee, even if it meant killing more agents to do so. Agent Mireles saw it happening and knew there was no time. Crawling across the pavement with his shotgun in hand, he got closer, inch by inch. Though his body was nearly failing, his focus never wavered. As Platt reached for the ignition, Mireles fired. Once, twice, then again. The final shots were fired at close range, less than 15 feet. Both suspects were killed instantly. The shootout, which lasted only a few minutes, was finally over, but the damage had been done. When the last shot was fired, the silence that followed felt unreal. It was as if time had stopped. Cars were wrecked, windshields shattered, the pavement littered with shell casings and blood. The once quiet street looked like a battlefield. The casualties were devastating. Special Agents Jerry Dove and Benjamin Grogan were dead. Both had been hit by multiple rounds, fighting to the end, trying to protect their fellow agents. 5 others were wounded, some critically. Residents began stepping out cautiously, shocked by what they were seeing just outside their front doors. In a matter of minutes, one of the most violent confrontations in FBI history had taken place right in their neighborhood. Emergency responders quickly arrived. Wounded agents were rushed to the hospital, and the area was cordoned off. Crime scene investigators began the painstaking process of documenting every detail. Bullets were embedded in trees, fences, and engine blocks. Spent magazines were scattered around like confetti from a terrible celebration. The 2 suspects, Michael Platt and William Maddox, were confirmed dead inside the vehicle they had tried to escape in. Autopsies later revealed that they had each sustained over a dozen gunshot wounds. But despite their injuries, they had kept fighting relentlessly. For the FBI, the losses were personal. Many of the agents involved had worked together for years. Grogan and Dove were not just colleagues. They were part of a close-knit team. The pain of their deaths hit hard and sparked something deeper than grief, a demand for change. One senior agent at the scene later said, "We were brave, but we were unprepared. That can't happen again." And it wouldn't. In the days and weeks following the Miami shootout, the FBI began a deep and sobering review of everything that went wrong. The agents had been brave. There was no question about that. But the confrontation had revealed troubling gaps in tactics, equipment, and preparedness. Most of the agents involved had been armed with .38 caliber revolvers, weapons that, while reliable, simply couldn't match the firepower of the semi-automatic rifles and shotguns used by Platt and Maddox. Several agents were forced to reload under fire, a dangerous delay that cost precious seconds. Others had no body armor. Many had only minimal cover. The Bureau quickly recognized that their training and tools needed to evolve. In the aftermath, the FBI implemented major changes to its firearms policy. Agents began carrying semi-automatic pistols, like the 9mm and later the .40 caliber Glock, firearms with larger magazines and faster reloading capability. Training was updated to include more realistic urban combat scenarios, including active shooter situations, vehicle engagement, and close-quarters firefights. One of the most direct results of the shootout was the development of the 10mm round, later leading to the widespread adoption of the .40 S&W caliber for law enforcement agencies across the country. The idea was simple. Agents needed stopping power without sacrificing accuracy or speed. Tactical thinking changed too. The Bureau began to prioritize better coordination between field teams, more detailed threat assessments before attempting arrests, and stronger use of intelligence gathering to understand who they were up against. Special Agent Ed Mireles, who had survived a shootout despite devastating injuries, was awarded the FBI Medal of Valor. His heroism became a case study in determination, discipline, and grit under unimaginable pressure. Mireles would go on to speak publicly about that day, not with bravado, but with quiet honesty. This wasn't about being a hero, he said in later interviews. It was about survival. It was about protecting your team. And because of that survival, hundreds, if not thousands, of agents after him will be better prepared for the dangers they might one day face. The 1986 Miami shootout didn't just mark the end of a deadly encounter. It became a defining moment in the history of the FBI. It forced the Bureau to confront the hard truth. Bravery alone wasn't enough. In a changing world with more violent criminals and deadlier weapons, the agency needed to adapt or risk losing more lives. What happened that April morning wasn't just a tragedy. It was a turning point. The sacrifice of Jerry Dove and Benjamin Grogan became a rallying cry for change. The FBI named a firearms training facility in their honor. Their names are etched in stone. But more importantly, their story is etched into the training of every agent who joins the Bureau. Today, tactical operations across the U.S. are shaped in part by the lessons learned on that Miami street. Law enforcement agencies nationwide re-examined their protocols, upgraded their weapons, and improved officer safety standards because of what happened that day. It also changed the way the FBI viewed its role, not just as investigators, but as first responders who may find themselves face-to-face with life-or-death choices in an instant. That mindset shift shaped everything from agent gear to vehicle design to mission planning. But beyond all the technical changes, what still resonates the most is a human story. A group of agents, caught in a moment they never asked for, gave everything to protect one another. And in the middle of that chaos, one man, wounded, bleeding, nearly out of time, crawled forward with a shotgun and ended the fight. Special Agent Ed Mireles, and every agent who stood on that scene, carried with him a legacy of sacrifice and resilience. The Miami shootout will always be remembered not just for what was lost, but for how it changed an entire generation of law enforcement. For the FBI, it became more than a case. It became a catalyst, a wake-up call, a story written in courage, and one the Bureau would never forget.